If you're an asshole, bad shit's gonna happen.
Yeah, yeah.
What are you gonna do? Speaking of Julie and everything, so she brought you up, spoke very highly of you, but I don't think we've ever had a conversation.
I don't think we have. I actually remember you're one of the first people I remember when I moved here. Cause,
Really?
yeah, my first time at Lincoln Lodge, at a Lincoln Lodge open mic, you were there, and I remember you were one of the only guys who sits on the stool. And I can't remember the whole bit, but you were doing a bit about how black basketball coaches always have crazy nicknames.
Gotcha.
Made up nicknames for their players, and I can't remember anything about it, but that was the bit.
Yeah, that must have been when I first. When did you move here?
I moved here, I guess, 2.5 years ago, so June 2021. Yeah.
I was August 2021, so it was around the same time.
Oh, really? Oh, okay, gotcha.
Where are you from originally?
I'm from Minneapolis, and I moved there. Here from there, but I started comedy in Portland, Oregon. It's where I went to college.
Okay.
So I was there for 5 years, moved back to Minneapolis during the pandemic to sell my dad's house, and then moved here after that was wrapped up to do the comedy thing.
And here we are.
Yeah.
What got you into comedy in college? What made you start?
I did improv in high school. A friend just got me into it, and I liked it a lot. I didn't get on the improv team at my college, but it was like a little liberal arts school, like 1,400 people, but they had a comedy club, like a stand-up club. And the first time I went, it's great with those small communities because it was like 100 people in the audience in this horrible room for comedy. It was a chapel.
Ooh.
Yeah. So like 100-foot high ceilings, and they asked if anyone wanted to go up. And at the end of the show, and my hand shot up before I really decided, and I said that thing back then. When you're watching a stand-up show and you're like, I could do this. I could be on the show and I would be murdering. So I was doing that the whole time I was watching. I was like, I'll talk about landing on my testicle on the ladder in elementary school.
Yeah.
And I just did that, and then I weaseled my way into taking over the club, and then I just had this little room once a month with 100 people, like right when I started, and it was just like such a good place to start.
Yeah. That's a nice little setup to have there.
Yeah.
Were you interested in performance before college, or did you just fall into it? How'd that happen?
Yeah, I fell into it in high school, and then I had no idea what I was going to do with my life. I mean, I liked doing improv in high school, and then as soon as I tried stand-up, I was like, there was no like real decision. I'm not one of those guys who was like, when I was 8, I wanted to be a stand-up comedian,
right.
But I fell into it, and I liked it, and I was good at it at the time. I felt like I was good at it, and I was like, this is all I know I want to do. Yeah.
That mystical Eddie Murphy, I was born to do this type of thing is very rare.
Yeah.
But the I don't know, that dream, that weird instinct to be on stage.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's ego or if you're just delusional or what that is, because nobody's good in the beginning.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know what the struggle was like when you first started, because it sounds like you got into it. This is the street. Literally,
we got some atmosphere.
The whole podcast is gonna be like
birds chirping, motorcycles firing. Yeah.
But comedy and making a living off of it.
Yeah.
I mean, you went to college. What did you study? Theater or something?
Philosophy.
Okay.
Yeah.
You give a fuck about getting a job. Okay.
Yeah. No, I was.
Why philosophy?
Philosophy. I was just trying to figure out a lot of shit. My backup plan, I was like, well, I like philosophy, and philosophy students do well on the LSAT, so maybe I'll be a lawyer. And then I fell out of that because that was my plan for a year. Had to pick a major, and then my friend was like, if you go to law school, then you have to be a lawyer. And then as soon as he said that, I was like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing.
And then
Yeah.
here we are. So, and the goal is to be a professional comic. That's the plan.
Yeah, that's the plan. I'm doing a lot of production stuff right now, but professional comedian, just making my living off of it, which is, much harder said than done. But yeah, I got into philosophy and I think stand up because I was really looking for some spiritual relief, a big part of, how I started with comedy and what my comedy was at the beginning was about my father. He died like 7 years ago, and he had terminal cancer for 10 years, which is a long terminus. So I think I got into philosophy because I was like, I really want to develop my soul and my mind, and I was looking for anything. And then the kind of philosophy that was offered was not that. It was very analytical and beyond lofty. Yeah.
So how old were you when he died?
I was 19, so I was in college.
Okay, so he's had cancer since you were 9.
Yeah, he had appendicitis when maybe I was even 7, and they found like a big ass tennis ball sized tumor. And then when I was around 12, they were like, oh, it's everywhere. It's terminal.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did he last for so long?
It was an interesting situation where it was just like, he didn't have like a big grapefruit anywhere. He just had buckshot, all throughout everywhere. So for a while, he was just on chemo, no surgery or anything. And it was just like held at bay, It's just sort of a World War I, we're at both sides of the trenches. No man's land is his life. And so for a while, nothing really happened. He was just having chemo, no symptoms. And then the last couple of years, bones started to break and stuff like that. And a whole Jobian series of things happened. So I was looking for philosophy to be like, what's going on in my life? I need some spiritual work.
Rationalize emotionally.
Yeah. I tried to write a thesis about that, or initially was about, rationalizing your emotions. And I ended up writing a thesis about how, like, you are your history, and your history is yourself writing itself. And, it was very circular. I don't think my professors bought it. But, that's what I love about stand-up is, like, I do think, I have an autobiographical lean to my material, or at least I did. We can sort of get into that later. And so I sort of feel like stand-up allows you to craft yourself if you believe that you are your story. And I definitely, like, romanticize that, and I appreciate that, is you get to synthesize the facts of your life, and then present them to people and sort of reify them and make them real.
I can definitely see how you were a philosophy student.
Yeah.
Describe about that. Like, I've had a lot of comics do this, and that's a very philosophy student way to approach it.
Yeah.
Now, are you religious in any way? Are you atheist, agnostic?
I'm sort of hopefully agnostic right now. I practice a little bit of Buddhism.
It's my chakras, baby.
Nice. Yeah. I do a little meditation. I'm part of like a Buddhist recovery group, like sobriety group called Refuge Recovery. So I'm sort of I've got some deism, some theism going on, but I don't prescribe to anything in particular.
Being positive, hopeful.
Yeah, I'm like, there's something out there.
Yeah.
There's some kind of objective meaning to the world, I'd like to think.
You said so I guess to lean into that a little bit, have you ever taken like psychedelics or anything?
Yeah. I have taken mushrooms and acid and Tootsie B and stuff like that.
Did that connect to your spirituality at all? And 2, did that connect to sobriety at all?
Yeah, I never really had a problem with those, so I sort of like don't include them in. I haven't done psychedelics in quite a while, but I don't include them in my like sobriety mission, like things I need to avoid. And And mostly, I don't remember. I mean, the first time you do psychedelics just sort of like cracks the egg open, and you're like, the yolk is flowing. And you're like, wow, I'm 15 and not ready for this experience.
You took it at 15?
Yeah. I was, and let's see, what I took it at 15, and then I took too much, and I was listening to opera, and I was like, we gotta slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't think I really had a God. Have you had a God moment with
mushrooms?
with psychedelics of any kind?
Yeah, I had. Maybe this was the third time taking it. I was at like a motel type of place, and I was over by the pool scaring the family that was there. They left as soon as I came by, and I was just
petting the water.
I was looking at my hand, turning into a snake and shit. Eventually, they were like, "Let's not be around this man. He's clearly having a moment." But I was sitting at the pool, and I had this moment where it felt like, okay. It's an onomatopoeia is the best way to describe it. It was like a whoosh, whoosh.
Yeah.
And it felt like, for me, my interpretation, it felt like being watched over by God. Like when I looked up, I could, for my interpretation, could feel some sort of higher being. And I remember feeling so happy and joyful and taken care of. And then that turned into so sad for everybody else who wasn't feeling that way. I could feel that not everybody else was feeling the way I was feeling right now, and that was really sad to me.
Yeah.
So that was my experience on a God level of it. Yeah.
I had one big God moment non-psychedelically that came about from a large depression. I was... Well, you know what? I got to say, if you're ever really depressed, don't get a philosophy major. Because, I was reading about Descartes and like, well, there's no epistemological way, no knowledgeable way to know that you're real. It could all be just an evil genius or a devil. Yeah. You could be a brain in a vat. Have you ever heard that one?
Yeah, that's a terrifying one.
Yeah. And then there's a classic Matrix. Yeah. So my brain was sort of like, this might be a Matrix, maybe you're supposed to break out of it. Which is always
scary.
Which is always scary, yeah. And I was going sort of crazy, and I was like, man, am I crazy because I have like a mental illness, or is this a simulation, or is it because my father died and I'm grieving? And I was having that sort of breakdown at a cafe. I was like, am I crazy, or is it because my father has died? And there were two groups of people next to me, and one of them was these guys talking about having schizophrenia. And I was like, that is a big coincidence. And then the other group of people were talking about their friend who had just died of colon cancer, which is what my father had died of. So I was like, whoa.
And you're sober at this point? In that moment, you weren't on anything?
I was sober. Yeah. This is a totally sober experience.
If you were on shrooms at that point, that would have been real terrifying.
Yeah. I would have just burst out of my skin and melted and gone through the ceiling. And then I was like, this is crazy. This must be a simulation. Too big of a coincidence. And I was losing it. A friend talked me down. I went home. And I went to watch a movie just to chill out and disconnect. And I watched the Black Mirror movie Bandersnatch. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah. What decision were you? All right.
Well, I didn't know. I didn't know what it was about.
Have you ever seen any other Black Mirrors?
I've seen other Black Mirrors. Black Mirrors.
No judgment. Okay, so you picked Bandersnatch.
I picked Bandersnatch, which is a movie about a young man who is having his reality controlled by a higher being, which is you, and he can't tell if he's going crazy or it's because he's grieving over his parent who had just died. So I was like, that was too big of a coincidence.
It was choose your own adventure too, right? You could pick.
Yeah. So like that freaked me out because of the parallel. And then the next day, I'm just feeling like still crazy. And that night, I have this dream. I have one dream where I just shit the bed, like, in the dream, like, I flood the bed. And I looked it up, and, it says something about, like, spiritual awakening. And then I had another dream where my father was there, and it was like really visceral. And he was like, "It's okay. It's all been okay." And he was sort of stern. And I woke up, and in a class that I was taking, we were reading about this Islamic idea of the elsewhere. And sometimes you have dreams where a dead person will visit you from the elsewhere if they have unresolved business. And the example they used in a book is a father will visit his son if he still needs it. So that just comes up in the book, and I'm feeling crazy. I go to class. We're reading Aristotle in a different class, and I open my book up to a random page. It's a 2,000-page book, and there's one page called Divination and Dreams. And it's just the random page I open up to, and it says, sometimes dreams are a sign of madness, and sometimes it's divination from God. And then I felt like everything like crackling. It was just too much coincidence. And instead of like breaking and like having a psychotic break, I was just flooded with this sense of immense grace, where it was like so much coincidence that I was like, there is some meaning beyond me. There is something, laying this out like a Rube Goldberg machine or divinating something. And then I was overcome with a faith in God. And like all that depression was like washed out of me. And those experiences, they happen and then they fade and you sort of return. But that was my big God moment. And I still carry that with me.
That is, that's very beautiful.
Yeah.
It's in a dark
yeah.
way.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you feel, personally, feel like that was your dad talking to you?
I do. In that dream. And I've had dreams about him, and sometimes they're like distorted, but that one just felt like it was really, I do still believe it was like really him.
Do you believe in a heaven, or like when you picture your dad, wherever him, his soul, whatever you want to call it, is he in a place, or how do you imagine it?
Yeah, he's in Safeway. He's in a Safeway grocery store hanging out forever. No, I don't know. I don't really have a concept of, maybe there's some sort of like primordial spiritual soup that everyone sort of enters, but I can't really picture a place. I mean, of course I picture
The clouds
dancing on clouds,
yeah.
but I can't really get that. The planes would run into everyone. Yeah.
That's the description of heaven that feels kind of corny to me, is like, oh, they're all hanging out. It's one big party, and it's like that feels too Earth-like.
Yeah.
That's way too...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was talking to my grandmother about heaven, and she was like, it must be so crowded there. And I loved that. It's like there's no room. Everyone's like elbow to elbow.
It's frustrating. I think this is where my frustration comes with religious and being religious or spiritual on some capacity, is it's hard to talk to people about it without them assuming you're dumb, for lack of a better word.
Right.
Because, well, let me do the thing. No offense to people that are traditionally religious, but they're not usually the most intelligent.
Sure.
Forward-thinking. There's usually like the type of person that falls into extreme religious rhetoric.
Yeah.
Usually is not much of a critical thinker.
Yeah.
I remember I was. I don't know if you knew this. I'm an interpreter, American Sign Language interpreter.
Oh no, I didn't know that. Okay.
I'm an interpreter.
Okay.
And I remember back, I'm from California, and which I don't know if you knew that as well.
I didn't know that either, but I just had a feeling you would know what Safeway was. That was God. That was God telling me. Yeah.
Dude, I was at a church to interpret.
Okay.
And I hate it. I always hated interpreting church because you can't, as the interpreter, your job is to give the information back and forth. You can't insert your own beliefs, and to be in a space where I'm hearing shit that I disagree with, I have to be like, this is what they're saying, and it's very difficult for me.
Just doing a footnote with your other hand, being like, but maybe we don't know. Yeah.
Maybe look at this perspective.
Yeah.
No, but like
global warming is actually.
It was before the service had started and before the deaf person came, and I was talking with one of the people there were trying to talk to me because I'm the interpreter and that's interesting to people. And I was holding back on my opinions, just letting them talk until they said something. I can't remember what it was. And I said, well, you read the Bible and it's an interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, and they were like, no, it's not. I said, well,
yeah.
no, when you read the Bible, you interpret the Bible from your perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no. We read it exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no, like literally everyone can take something different from one source. So it is literally your interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
Damn, sorry.
Happy screams.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. And we're going in circles, and it's just that stuff like that is maddening to me, and it makes me embarrassed to call myself any sort of religious anything because those people are involved.
Right. Yeah, there's this philosopher. There's a woodpecker outside.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, I have no idea what that is.
I'm listening. I'm going to close the window. If it gets too hot, let me know. I'll turn on the fan.
Oh, for sure. But there's philosopher Kierkegaard. He's the guy who coined the term leap of faith. And
Loose faith?
Leap of faith.
Oh, okay.
And he's talking about literal faith in God. And his problem in 19th century, I think, Denmark was he said there were no real Christians, even though Christianity was very popular. And it's because of stuff like that is his conjecture was there are a lot of people who are sort of Christians by habit or Christians by dogmatism, where they would say something like, well, it's just literally as the Bible and it's all exactly true and there's nothing to interpret.
Can you define dogmatism before we keep going?
So just sort of sticking to whatever the religious authorities are telling you.
No question.
And Kierkegaard's saying he was a very serious Christian, and he said it takes like a lot of work. And leap of faith is that it's not just one leap. You have to constantly suspend, for example, like your ethics to believe in God. Like that's what Abraham had to do when he was going to sacrifice Isaac, is he was in this conundrum where it's wrong for most people to stab your son to death, but God was telling him. And it's this very complicated mental space that Abraham was in that Kierkegaard didn't think most people were engaging in. So I think in terms of like the intelligence or the rationality of a lot of religious people, I think sometimes they do get a bad name if they're saying things like there is no interpretation and there is no hard work in maintaining this.
Right. You just love God, and that's...
You just love... There's no doubt, Because, if I was the deaf guy at the church, I'd be like, is God doing bad things? He made me deaf, Right. Well, that's sort of hard.
Oh, boy, that's a whole other deaf... We can get into deaf culture if you're curious.
Yeah.
But it's... Yeah, man, it's like... It's tough. I was... I studied jiu-jitsu. I don't know if you...
Oh, okay. I'm a black belt in karate.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah,
really?
yeah.
Oh, we got to
You got to be when you're 120 pounds. you got,
I got to... Hold on. That's fascinating. I'm going to write that down.
Okay.
While I'm doing that, though, the guys, the people I work with, a lot of them are... Or my professor is Muslim, I believe it was.
Okay.
And he gave me this little book, and I was reading it because he's my professor, and I respect him very much. And it's essentially Islam and then the Quran is correct, and we are proving that with science. That's the book.
Yeah.
And it feels contradictory.
Yes.
What makes a religion, whether it's Muslim, Christianity, Buddhism, whatever it is that it's outside of logic and rationale. You can't.
Totally.
You can't. It's like you're saying, leap of faith. You just are hoping that this is right, and there's a beauty in that.
Right.
And so when you try to explain like fucking burning bushes from God with science, it just conflicts to me too much. But
it conflicts. You can also contradict yourself because It's like we're using science, and maybe the easiest answer is someone had a magnifying glass and the bush burst into flames.
Right.
You know?
All of the miracles that Jesus has done, you could go to a magic show and literally see this.
Yeah.
It's tough, and I appreciate the desire to give some sort of proof or evidence.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, man, you just believe.
Yeah,
magic, and I guess that's fine. I like magic. Again, I got my shit up there.
Yeah.
But karate.
Yeah.
Do people know that you fuck people up? Is that?
I don't think so. Also, because when you have the body of an 11-year-old girl and you say you're a black belt in karate, people. It doesn't happen anymore, but people will ask you to prove that.
Right.
But yeah, I started when I was. Like 7, and I was doing it pretty regularly until I was 17, and then a little bit of sparring in and out of college and all that. But I haven't done much in a while.
A little rusty.
Yeah, definitely a little rusty. But I love it. I mean, I've always liked independent things, and like sparring is there's one other person, but it's sort of similar to stand-up. Like, I've never done a lot of team sports, but it is very like you have to be engaged in the moment and reactive to the people across from you. I love fighting. I love sparring.
Same.
Yeah.
And I also get the I think I'm bigger, but I come off very sweet, I think.
Yeah.
So they're surprised by that as well. But I get the prove it thing.
Yeah.
No, that's What got you? Not what got you, because you're 7. What made you keep going? Because that's something most people tap out of.
Yeah, tap out. Yay! Let's see. I just stuck at it. I mean, my brother was doing it, and I wasn't a part of any other like structured things outside of school, and I just grew up doing it, so I kept doing it. And then when I left, the confines of my childhood life, it sort of drifted away. It's still an important thing, and one of those things where I'm like, I'm gonna get back to it. Yeah.
I think this is my philosophy. I think everybody should be like required to take a martial art.
Oh yeah.
I think everyone should be required to take a martial art or some sort of fighting thing.
Yeah.
A martial art, and everyone should be required to work in a service industry for like 1 year.
Yeah.
For empathy purposes.
That should be our conscripted service, is being a karate waitress. Yeah.
Do you feel like your style is good for practical use out in the streets?
Yeah. Well, what's funny is that they taught us, in martial arts, especially as a kid, they teach you really to do the most practical thing, which is like
run.
If someone, yeah, exactly. Well, run if you can, or if someone's like got a knife and wants your money, you just give them your wallet.
Yeah,
you can get a new wallet. You can replace that shit. And also, if you're really in danger, just knee them in the testicles as hard as you can. Assuming they have testicles.
Yeah,
assuming you can knee the vagina as well.
I assume that hurts as well.
Yeah.
If you do it hard enough.
Like whenever I'm walking alone at night, I'm just gonna punch someone in the throat. It's gonna be a 3-second encounter if something were to happen.
There is this. It's so funny. After you do a martial art for long enough, the desire to actually fight kind of dissipates. I've only been doing jiu-jitsu for like a year and some change.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah.
I wish I started at 7. I'd be a monster right now.
Well, I wish I was doing it now. Yeah.
But they're like pre-jiu-jitsu, there's not to say I was wanting to get into fights all the time, but you have no tools for it, and so anytime something happens, your instincts of fight or flight happen with no technique.
Right.
And now when some shit goes down, I'm a much calmer person.
Yeah.
I would say.
I would also be a catty little bitch about it, because there'd be like fights in high school and stuff, and you'd see people doing the dishwasher style or the washing machine style like this. I'm like, you guys, this is not a cool fight. There were no cool fights.
Really? Yeah. That's something else.
You're sort of adorable, and I'm like,
that's something else I learned is most people don't know how to actually fight. Like,
no.
As soon as you see a stance like
Yeah.
You don't know what the fuck you're doing.
Like, it's great. It'll be two guys who are not protecting their head at all, and
Crazy.
no one goes for it. Yeah.
That's yeah. And then you said philosophy was too analytical.
Yeah, we ended up doing a lot of things just about really like what logic is and really deep metaphysics, and I was looking more for sort of what turned out to be continental philosophy, which is like European guys talking about like what to do with your life and the soul and the spirit.
Can we make some distinctions here? So the philosophy you ended up going to in college was one thing versus continental, which is another.
Yeah,
thing.
so I studied analytic philosophy, which is associated a lot with England in the 20th century and rationalism and logic.
Can you define that, rationalism and logic?
Yeah, so logic is a formal system of like if A then B and making arguments inside of this sort of mathematical formula. And then rationalism is, let's see, maybe I don't want to say rationalism, but sort of a lot of talk about what philosophy is and how do we know anything, which is epistemology. And I sort of wanted to go looser and explore like the soul, because I was really looking for meaning, like existential meaning.
And that would be more continental?
That would be more continental, yeah. Like people like Nietzsche and Kierkegaard and Sartre and Camus and yeah.
Do you watch Wisecracked on YouTube?
No.
I'm going to send that to you. I think you'll really enjoy that. They get into those philosophers, and they usually connect them through cartoon, like Rick and Morty. And how does that?
Oh yeah. No, it's awesome to watch, specifically Rick and Morty and other existential themes into like popular media. I love that. Because philosophy is everywhere. It's in stand-up, especially.
You want to dig into that? How so?
Like, I watch Louis specials, and I don't know if he's read these philosophical papers, but I love seeing stand-up that stumbles upon the same arguments that like academic philosophers are using. The example I like is there's this argument about abortion that is like, okay, it compares the female body to like a house. Like, you're allowed to kill somebody if they come in your house. And Louis got a joke about if someone's in your pussy, you can kill them. You know, you should be able to kill them.
It is killing a baby.
Yeah.
But you have the right to kill that baby in this context.
Yeah. There's just like, I think a lot of stand-up and philosophy, like it works on finding things that we're not examining or thinking about critically just because they're normal parts of our life, and then being like, isn't this weird? Like, you know, does it matter if someone is mad at you when they murder you or they did it on accident? Isn't that weird that
we have there's a difference between manslaughter and first-degree murder. And
yeah.
You're still dead.
Yeah.
But the process in which it happened.
Someone is slaughtered. Yeah.
I get you, and that's, to me, that's what makes a comic not hacky. When you see the like dating apps, am I right?
Yeah.
Tinder, you swipe a lot, and it's like, yes, you could do those jokes, but they are the most low-hanging fruit. Whenever I see fucking white people and black people, am I right? White people drive like that, and it's
yeah.
You better have a really interesting angle.
Don't tell them my whole act, Aaron. Yeah. Well, this is something I wanted to talk with you about too. I used to do a lot more autobiographical stuff, like dead dad jokes. And
I'm so sorry, dude. I don't know what that is.
Sounds like a liquid.
And it stops.
It stops.
All right. Well, if it happens again.
The woodpecker doesn't want to know.
I know. Right?
But when I was in college and I was running this club, I had like, I wasn't working for anyone. I wasn't in a club setting. Like, I could just do what I wanted to. And I did a lot of stuff about my dad's death and, like, stuff that it's hard to get people to relate to. But as I've been in Chicago and, just taking comedy more seriously and in these 10-minute spots, I've noticed that there's sort of a magnetism to hackiness, I guess. In terms of, or maybe this is just a worry I have, but I've done a lot less of the dead dad jokes and like the philosophical stuff, and I'm just noticing that my set is mostly what I know works, and it's a little less. It's gotten a little less meaningful as time goes on. It's meaningful in terms of, like, when I do well, I'm giving people a good experience. But the more, like, conceptual stuff I used to do, I notice that it sort of has left my act. And that's something that I struggle with because those jokes are very important. Like, have you seen Nanette?
I have.
Yeah. She makes, I've, conflicted views about that special, but I think she does make some good overall points where, like, it is hard to express, like, serious or traumatic stuff in comedy and make it enjoyable, which she does manage to do. And I feel like there's a gravitation towards just sort of silly, flippant stuff. And I love silly stuff, too. But I find that there's pressure to get away from, like, the really serious stuff that makes people uncomfortable. Yeah.
I know what you're saying. I think we're just gonna have to ignore whatever that is.
Yeah, I'm ignoring it.
Hold on. It's from my computer. Hold on. Oh my god, dude. I'm sorry.
No. You're good.
Okay. That was my computer.
You got a little metronome up or something?
I don't know. Let me do that. I know exactly what you mean. When I it's okay. I'm gonna talk a lot. Get ready.
Yeah, I'm ready for it. I'm ready for it.
So one of my favorite moments from this podcast was a episode I did with. I gotta find him. I don't want to. Sorry, my memory is dog shit. So
as is mine. I don't know your name or mine.
I did the podcast with someone whose name I will say momentarily to just jog my memory. And in the podcast, he was talking about, like, me sitting on the stool and me, Jason Melton.
Okay, yeah.
You know Jason Melton.
Yeah.
Okay, so he was talking about me sitting on the stool and the pictures I post with Instagram and how it's not always comedy related. And he said, I've clipped it too. I've yet to stop thinking about this. He said, doesn't seem like you want to be a comic. You want to be an artist. And he was his tone implied it as an insult, but it was something that never left my brain. I kept thinking about it. I was like, and what I realized was he was absolutely right. I am only doing stand-up because it is the most efficient way for me to express.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I remember being a kid. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be a director. I wanted to be a cartoonist. I wanted to, really what it came down to was I just wanted to express these feelings in some way, and stand-up is the most efficient way to go about it.
Right.
And so because that was my mentality, for a long time, my comedy was miserable.
Yeah.
Like, it was so not good or funny.
Yeah.
It was
like miserable as in a bummer or just poor art?
Both.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
I wasn't focused. I didn't understand myself enough to be doing all of this stuff in depth because I didn't know how to articulate it. And then I wasn't focused on the craft of comedy.
Yeah.
People laugh. So the jokes were dog shit too.
Yeah.
I was just bad all around.
Yeah.
And as time has gone on, now I think how long have you been doing it?
My first set was 8 years ago.
Okay.
So yeah.
About 8 years is 9 years. And now what I do is I'm able to control the dial a little better. So sometimes, usually I'll start off with, hey, this is fun and we're being silly, we're telling jokes, and then once the audience feels comfortable and we can change the dial, we can get a little honest for a second. Don't worry, I got you. We're gonna go back to comedy because I know how to do both of these things. And that's been my way to reconcile that thing that you're talking about.
No, I totally relate to that. I guess I think, and this may be an insecurity of mine or just my sort of apprehension of this situation, but I always feel like I'm auditioning. You know, when I'm, I guess when I'm at like a club, I'm like, every time I want it to go well. And then I'm like, these jokes, like dead dad jokes, are riskier. And I love when they work. But I've noticed that I've shied away from them because I just want to do a quote-unquote good job and leave everyone smiling. And, hey, I'm still trying to find the balance of, like, how to work, because I do a similar thing too. When I do those, is like, let's start light and fun, and you guys know me. Because the worst note that I get is you're scaring us. Have you ever gotten that one before?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Depressing or scaring or being pretentious. Those three are my...
Pretentious is a scary one too. Yeah, pretentious.
It's the stool sitting for me. Dude, the amount of comics that fucking hated me because I sat on the stool is crazy. But.
So where does the stool sitting come from? Because a lot of people... I sit on the stool sometimes, not all the time. And part of me is just... feels a little iconoclastic. Just, you know, like I want to... I think... any rules that people have like that, like I have a friend who's like, the rule for sitting on the stool is you have to be over 300 pounds, disabled, or over 55. I'm like, these are stupid rules. These are stupid rules. Yeah.
The stool sitting for me is just comfortable.
Exactly.
It's really comfortable.
It should be such a simple, you have it up there. Yeah. Why not use it? Yeah.
It's comfortable and it creates a different, when you do that, you're making kind of a statement to people, I've come to realize. I think, and the statement is very confident, and I think it's almost like...
it's comfortable too.
Yeah. For the audience, I don't know... I'll speak to the comics first, then the audience.
Yeah.
For the comics, I think that they're viewing it as like, oh, you think you're hot shit, huh?
Exactly.
You think you're fucking Bill Cosby pre-rape allegations.
Yeah.
And
you've graduated to the stool. Yeah.
There's something about it that is harder to do when you are sitting on it.
Yeah.
Because it does something different to the energy in the room. And for the audience, I don't know how they're taking it. I do know that they do notice it because most people are standing. As soon as you get up there and sit down, it's like you've just done something very different.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately, because that mentality of like, I'm just trying to express myself, and me sitting and you sitting puts us on a similar playing field in that way. So.
Yeah. It feels there's a certain intimacy about it. Where do you think the root of the phobia of stool sitting comes from? Is it just because a lot of greats sit, or because it's called stand? I don't know what it is.
The stool, the people I know that sit on the stool are Cosby, Chappelle when he feels like it, Ali Sadiq, which is one of my guys.
Yeah. Michael Shea, sits on the stool.
Michael Shea sits on the stool. Another one of those very confident, cool guys. Are there any other stool sitters? There's not many.
There's not many.
Yeah.
DC Curry, he sits on a stool. These are just people I've seen come through Zanies.
Right. So famous people.
Yeah.
There's just not a lot.
Yeah. There's not.
I don't know, but I plan on being one of them.
Yeah.
People remember me for it.
You know, it could also be part of why I remember you vividly.
Because I was sitting?
That is possible. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're a very intelligent person.
I try my best. Well, I like, you mentioned before we started that some people are comics aren't comfortable being sincere or in the non-comedy mode. Yeah. And I tend to be very comfortable in that mode.
Oh, good. Same. I'm sure we've picked up on that with each other.
Yeah.
There is this, like, with comics, I always have to emphasize, like, that you don't need to be funny. Like, this is of all the places to just be regular, this is the place. Like I want
yeah.
comfortable as possible for you to just. You don't need to be funny. It's fine. If anything, I get annoyed by that. Like, there's enough fucking comedy podcasts where a bunch of guys sit around with a microphone and make each other laugh.
Yeah.
Let's do something different, guys.
Yeah. One of my biggest pet peeves is, it's something about comedians. Have you ever been talking to a comic just, before whatever, and you realize that they're telling you one of their jokes in conversation?
I realize it. Yes. One, I hate it when I realize it in the conversation. I especially fucking hate it when I don't realize it. Good for them for making me not realize it. But when I don't realize it, and then
you see them do it,
motherfucker, you weren't even talking to me.
Yeah.
Like, it's
like, are you test running on me? You're a psychopath. Yeah. And I have an instinct to do it too. I'm not immune from it, but it's wild.
It is, and I think this is going back to the whole artist, not comedian thing. Is I don't like hanging around comedians. I don't fucking like it.
Yeah.
That's a big part of why if you see me, like, I'm an introvert, and so I want to stay to myself. But it's also that, like, there's something that sucks all of my energy out around comedians. Whereas when I hang out with musicians or painters or film people in film, they're very calm.
Yeah. Musicians are a different breed. Yeah.
I love hanging out with musicians.
It's a lot slower.
It's
a lot slower.
It doesn't feel like someone's trying to outdo you in the conversation.
Yeah, someone's just doing more air guitar than someone else. Yeah.
And I'm sure there's stuff about musicians. There's stuff about artists in general that's douchey in general. But, like, there's something about comics that fucking exhaust me.
That's one of my biggest worries about my own career. I don't know if you can relate to this. Is I'm fairly introverted, and with not drinking anymore, are you familiar with the term hang tax? That's the term a friend uses where it's just like, in comedy, to get shows, you've got to hang out.
That's a good word.
Yeah, it's a good term, and it's a little cynical and sinister, but it's a little bit true. And I struggle. I don't pay the hang tax. I just want to go home.
Same.
Yeah.
Same.
And it's tough. I mean, because a lot of it is like, I don't want to go out until 4 a.m. and hang around with people who are drinking, just because I'm not going to be engaged with that.
If anything,
and I want to go home.
Yeah,
I like it there.
And I think people can pick up on it. If you're hanging out for the hang tax, people can tell that you don't actually want to be there.
Yeah.
Shooting yourself in the foot anyway.
Yeah.
When I first moved out here, I was trying to do that because I was trying to also figure out myself. I didn't know I was an introvert like that, and I didn't know a lot of stuff about myself.
Yeah.
So I would hang out where I did not actually want to be.
Yeah.
And then inevitably I would just be disassociated, and then I would blurt out the wrong thing, upset somebody, and now I've just pissed off all these people.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where I was like, I'll just fucking leave, man. I'll do my comedy, leave you alone.
Yeah.
So I get it, and I do think that you can make it and figure it out without having to hang. It's a different angle.
It is a different, and I go a lot with, one of the things I learned about running the comedy club in college is being a producer or a booker is good because you have something to give people. And you can look at it sort of like Machiavellian and like sort of business Trumpy, but it also is a good way to like make relationships because people appreciate being given something, and it's like a sign of friendship. So I don't do the hang tax, but I do the booking tariffs.
Yeah, a little quid pro quo, scratch my back. I get you.
Yeah, but also, not one of my favorite things to do is at Red Room, which your former guest Julia talked about, I know, is I love to book comedians from our open mic who I know are either they're new or something else, they're relegated to the open mic scene, and give them a showcase and like have them do well because it's so much more meaningful.
Giving people a shot.
Yeah, giving people a shot because some people, if you've been around for a while, you just look at it as another showcase. but you can give people like their first, and I think that's really like beautiful and makes the friendship that makes. It's just like saying like I see that you have something, I want to give you something. I'm happy to give it to you, and it makes me happy that you have it. And that's why I like the production side of it.
That's very sweet.
Yeah.
I'm going to present the more cynical side of it now.
Please do. Please do.
I know what you mean.
I'm treading on water trying to make it opmistic. Yeah.
I get you. I also I run a show at the Second City, and you can do that. Mm-hmm. And there's also this like, oh, you have something? Mm-hmm. The seagulls all kind of come and like, oh yeah.
I know.
Oh, what can you get for me? And I have
that's tough. Yeah.
And I think you're probably similar. I am a people pleaser. I'm a nice person. Mm-hmm. I want to give all of you the time.
Yeah.
But people paid money.
Yeah.
To see a good show.
Uh-huh.
People paid their hard-earned money, and
I want people to come back.
And you want people to come back, and this is your fucking job.
Yeah.
And it's mean, but I'm sure you've had people come up to you or email you or whatever that want to get on, and you're like, I've seen your comedy, and this is you can't say it to them directly, but it's like, this isn't you. I'm gonna say it the nice way. You are not there yet.
Yeah.
And closed mouths don't get fed. I respect reaching out.
Yeah.
But it's when it starts to get shady that I don't like it.
Shady how?
Shady like if you message me because you want a spot first off, don't message me. Message the goddamn Instagram. That's why we have it. Message the Comedy Typhoon Instagram.
Yeah.
But if you message me for a spot, but you started off with like, hey man, how you been? Like, what's going on?
Oh, I know.
Like,
yeah.
You don't talk to me. We're not friends.
Yeah.
Just ask me.
Yeah.
It feels like it's so disingenuous.
I know.
So I fucking hate that.
Yeah.
Or this like this when out at mics or whatever, they're like someone will be talking to me that hadn't talked to me prior. And,
yes.
And I'm like, it's fine that you hadn't talked to me prior. It's whatever. Like maybe we don't click as personalities, but now you're talking to me and it feels so fucking fake.
Yeah.
And I had I had multiple incidents this past 3 years of moving here where I was my heart was a little too open. I was a little too, allowed myself to be too vulnerable with people I shouldn't have. Mm-hmm. And I got fucked over from it.
Yeah.
So now I'm not, I have to, this is a business, and there's a reason why it's called a cutthroat business for a reason.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I'm a people pleaser. I'm a nice Midwestern guy, and I still struggle with how to say. It's almost impossible to say no, honestly, or it feels almost impossible because a lot of the time I'll be like, oh, we don't have availability, which is usually true, but I could also be like, we don't have availability right now. Here's when we will.
Yeah. Whereas if someone like Ken Flores showed up, you'd be like, yeah, no, go on stage.
Yeah. 40? You want 40? Yeah. Sure. You can do 2 hours. We'll cancel the show. Yeah. I don't care.
But he earned it.
Yeah.
You need to be self-aware and you need to be humble.
Mm-hmm.
Be better. I don't know. Fucking get better, and then everyone will want to book you.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Yep. I know. It doesn't, for some reason, it doesn't bother me that much anymore. When I first started booking shows or working at clubs, and there were a few people who I'm like, your attitude has noticeably shifted. Mm-hmm. It bothered me, but I guess now, I guess what brings me down is I'm like, in comedy, I'm like, oh, I know so many people. I have like 500 acquaintances, but I have like 2 friends. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's what gets me down. Is I'm fine having all of these acquaintances and being like, I'm not exactly sure if you're being nice to me genuinely or something, but there is a distance between. It is strange to know so many people, because I know people outside of comedy who don't know anyone in their real life. They have a remote job, and it's impossible to meet people. but we know hundreds of people in our catalog, but not that well.
Yeah, it's isolating and it can be kind of lonely.
It can be. It can be lonely in the ocean.
That's another reason. I'm gonna do the thing. That's another reason why this podcast is the way it is. I started it because I was lonely. I'd moved across the country and I didn't know anybody.
Why else do men start podcasts?
We have nothing else. And I'm more comfortable in this environment to get to know. Like when we saw each other at the Red Room, you're in work mode and I'm in work mode, and I'm thinking about the stuff and and it's not like this is a space where there's enough time to really talk, to get to know somebody.
Right.
And not to say that we're like best friends now.
Yes.
But I can pretty confidently say like, oh, I know Harry Jenson. Like I know what he's about. I know his vibe, and vice versa.
Right.
And so on some level, this podcast has helped me make friends, so.
Yeah. Have you made friends that go beyond the podcast, like people you keep in touch with now from this?
Yeah. I have a thing about, speaking of death.
Yeah.
I reach out to people and just randomly, because I've had a fair amount of death in my life.
Okay.
One in particular, it really shook me. I was 18. As a friend of mine. He was not my best friend or anything.
Yep.
But I knew him. We were in the same class together. We were around each other a lot. And he was a year younger than me. So it was his senior year of high school. And my senior year of high school, he was in his junior year. He was showing signs of something being off. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've ever... We'll get to it.
Yeah.
Clearly just mentally not doing well.
Right.
And I'm in college, and then my friend Matt calls me. He's like, hey, such and such, he's dead. He killed himself. And I was we had to go to a funeral. It was awful. And something happened in my head where I was like, oh, fuck. I'm never going to talk to him unless we all go to the puffy clouds.
Yeah.
Like, I'm never going to see this person again.
And it's crowded up there, so how are you going to find him?
How am I going to find him?
Yeah.
But it's like death is, if you haven't had somebody in your life die, you don't fully grasp how final that truly is. Mm-hmm. And so if I meet somebody through the podcast, like you might get a random message from me.
Yeah.
If I meet somebody through the podcast and we click enough and it feels comfortable enough, I'll just randomly message you, just because you never know.
You never know. Yeah. I run I appreciate the checking in too. Speaking of podcasts and death, I have a podcast about a comedy podcast about having dead parents, and we run a grief group because it's nice to have a space where people can have a context to meet. Mm-hmm. Because I was just talking about this with my friend today, like when someone dies, like if I had a death, like a family member passed away, even if you've experienced the exact same relational death, there's like not that much you can be like, you're pretty much like, damn,
Mm-hmm. Shitty.
Yeah. It's the same amount of power you have to like save Gaza or whatever. It's like, I really hope this goes well, but how much can I do? I think I don't think a lot of people have been taught or equipped to console somebody in that situation. I don't know how you like to be consoled, but for me, sometimes I just want someone around. We don't need to talk. We don't. It can be quiet. We can watch something, like whatever. But I can't stand the like, someone they die. You know what happened to me once? This is something that happened. Yeah. I know you're trying to. My cat.
Yeah. Oh Jesus. Yeah.
My cat has a weird foot now. Yeah. So that's how like you saw your father's body. Yeah.
It's like, I know you're trying to. I get what you're trying to do.
Right.
It is not helping. Shut the fuck up. Go away from me.
Big pet peeve. It's pet peeve time is when someone's like, and this is very cynical, but when someone's like, what can I do for you? I'm like, you're putting the onus on me now. You can't really do anything, but if I tell you that, somehow your feelings are hurt.
Right.
And just Make a casserole. Just you figure out something to do.
Yeah.
You've got the power. I believe in you. You're 24. You know, like you're an adult.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You can get me Skittles.
And I think like I don't know, death and not to say that it's fucked up because I don't wish death and the experience of it on anyone, but everyone's gonna experience it.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
There's something to be said about when you are younger and you are facing some type of mortality. There's a maturity that builds. That people that I know that like they haven't had death and they're like 19, 20. I'm like, it's gonna be real rough when you have to deal with this.
Yeah. Well, that's what I loved so much about and I still love about my death-related comedy, and I do plan to like, you know, make an album or a special out of it, something concrete. But most people, when I was, you know, my audience was 18 to 20, couldn't relate to it. But there were a few people who reached out and they're like, actually, like, my mom just died, or like, my father has early onset dementia and is going to die and like that felt like the thing that I could do. Like, I can't really console you in death, but like there's also some great pieces of art. Whitmer Thomas's The Golden One is about death. Gary Gulman's The Great Depression is about depression, and like there's some pieces of true art that are better than any like one-on-one truism you could say to someone, and I that's something I really appreciate about stand-up.
We will have to wrap it soon.
Yeah,
but do you think about death often? Is that something that's in your mind often?
Definitely. Well, because I've got, you know, death-related projects. I've got the Death podcast and the Grief group, and it's gotten less in time, but I also, you know, I'm in what you could call the recovery, but I'm a chain smoker. So yeah, so I definitely think about it, and you know, having a father who was, or someone in your life who was sick for so long, like when you're a child, it sort of just gets embedded into it. But it doesn't ruin my day anymore. Yeah. To think about death.
That's good.
It doesn't scare me. I know it scares other people still, and that's what's so tricky about it, is to make it not scary.
It doesn't scare you to die, or doesn't scare, what do you mean?
It doesn't scare me to talk about death, like right now. You know, I feel like we're both fairly comfortable. Yeah. And like, I think there's a worry that there was a lot of, my roommates never said anything when my dad died because they're like, they didn't want to bring it up, and I'm like, oh, I'm aware. Yeah, I figured it out. There's a hole in my heart and head. I'm aware. So it is definitely a part of my spirit, my character, and I mean, everything we've said today has sort of been couched in death. Yeah,
I guess we're very similar people in that way.
Yeah.
Because I also feel comfortable talking about it. In terms of dying, I personally, that's very scary to me.
I'm not down. Yeah. I am not. I don't want to go to the crowded place. Yeah.
Yeah, but and that's the other thing is, and this is what's scary. In this, then I go back to bring it full circle about those religious people. You're afraid to go to hell, is what it is. Mm-hmm. That's why you're not asking questions. That's why you're just afraid to go to the worst possible situation, which I can't judge you for, because that's scary. Yeah. In the back of my head, as rational or as whatever you want to be. I don't fucking know. Maybe I hope I didn't appease the wrong God.
Yeah,
I don't know.
There's something called Pascal's wager. Have you heard of that? Yeah. It's where like this Christian philosopher is basically like, well, if you don't believe in God, you might go to hell forever. And if you do believe in God, you might go to heaven forever. And that's way longer than your regular life. So the most logical thing to do is just believe in God just in case.
Is that the between those two, the continental versus the other one? Is that the other one?
I think he would be more of a continental guy. Really? Yeah.
That is logical and cynical beyond belief.
Yeah, it's a rational way to recruit people to Christianity. It's like, come on.
But it's so not the point.
I know, of course.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah, that's tough because I see the logic.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay.
The logic is separate from the faith.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You don't believe in God. You're just afraid. That's what's happening right now.
You can't go and then believe in God.
Right.
Yeah, it's not a chin scratch moment.
It's something in your soul, essentially.
Yeah. Yes.
I was gonna bring this up and I forgot about it. I really get annoyed with hyper logical people because
of course.
Yeah, there's just no humanity about what's his name? Fucking Ben Shapiro, Facts No Feelings.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yo, your feelings are part of who makes you human, you douche.
Also, you seem angry.
I know.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
Fuck, man. I don't know. But there is a question. I do have people back on the podcast.
Yeah, I'd love to come back.
We might have to do more of these. But the last question I always ask is, if you could look in the camera, pretend the camera's you 5 years from now, what would you like to say to yourself 5 years from now?
All right, so you gained 40 pounds. I don't know how you did it. Could be muscle, could be brawn. Let's see. 5 years from now, is the dog alive? Do you have more freedom? How's New York? I hope that you've acquired more patience than you have now, and you're not daunted by the hang tax anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now let's take this picture.
Let's do it.